on the bottom. Good. I want to make sure that the people in the upper area there hear me. Would you mind coming down and filling the seats before we start this lecture? Because we're going to have questions and answers, and we don't want to shout up there. Please come down so we can start this class. We have some very, very important and valuable guests here. Let's show respect. Come down. All these empty seats. I don't want anyone sitting up there. I should have put, come on down. Those students up there, the 4 of you, come down. Right here. Right here. You could move over and they can come in here too. Please move down to the lower rows of the amphitheater. Come down here. There's lots of seats. Right there, 1, 2, 3, and this girl sitting in the middle of it can move over. I'm talking to you. Move over. Come in this row, right here. Right here. Wonderful. It looks much better already. I hate empty seats. You know, right down here. Hello? Young lady with the coat, come here. Right here. 1, 2, 3. You see these nice seats here? They're waiting for you. Go to the end one. They're very nice. Bravo. And 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd appreciate it if you filled these seats. And here's my friend. I know he's going to sit right here. Right? Welcome. He comes every semester. We love him. Come on. Okay? What? No, not yet, because they're still signing in. It's 1:15. I think we'll start. Please come to the lower amphitheater so I can start. These 2 isolated people up there, join us. We're friendly. Come down here. Come to this row. Okay, we're ready to start. Don't fall. Welcome to CL 112, Faces and Places in Fashion. Today we have an extraordinary program that we're very fortunate to have 4 very, very important people from a group called FSN, Fashion Service Network. And they're all here to guide you and help you and answer your questions that will provide you direction for your future and how to get started, how to do. I'll read to you the opening subject of FSN will give many avenues for students to network. Our panel will give students practical advice and strategies for employment entering the fashion industry. The panel will also address students and recent graduates considering the new FIT entrepreneurial program, addressing startup challenges. There will be questions, and I will welcome our panelists to come and take their place at the table. And it's Michael Stanley from Rosenthal & Rosenthal, who's the moderator. and Andrew Jassyn of the Jassyn O'Rourke Group, and that beautiful Kathleen Sheehan. Well, there she is, yes. She's from Esp Trend Lab. How many of you know Esp Trend Lab? Raise your hand. Well, you should get to know, you will get to know them because they're fantastic. And Tom Nastos, ENK International Trade Shows. And I'm not going to say any more about them because each one is really well connected in the various areas of fashion. They all represent different aspects, and you will only benefit today from their presence here. And now I'm addressing my Faces and Places CL 112 students because we also have work to do, right? Your final tests have been graded. Last Monday was the day of your final tests, but your final grades have not because we have class next week. It's the closing class, December 21st, and I want you all to be present. And if you wish to know what your test grades are, you can come to our office, A639. And your field trips are incomplete. I'm horrified. They were supposed to be in. You had all this time till December 11th, Friday, and a whole collection came in. I guess you didn't read your course outline. I hope you did upstairs, and you have to remount them and not hand in such, because they represent you when you go out to get a job, and you would never get a job if they saw your field trips, the small group. Others were wonderful. You did just what you were supposed to, and they're presentable, and they're lovely. And so that's the end of my complaints and my compliments for CL 112. You can always call me. I'm always available, room A639, okay? Thank you. Mr. Michael. It's all yours. Thank you, George.
But I broke it. Yeah, but I don't need it. No. What I want to know, Professor, is it possible for the class to get like a little, not a lot, like a little extra credit for attending today? What do you think? Okay, trying for you. Okay, very good. Right. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Professor Pafazian. And, you know, we really, okay, thank you. And, okay. Yes, I was going to do that. No, I'm going to thank. Okay, so you do it. Okay, you do it. Okay. Yes. The best. Okay, very good. Okay. Yes. Huge. Okay, then. So what I'd like to do after we thanked everybody is introduce a very high-level group of panelists here today. And to my far right and to your left is Mr. Andrew Jassyn, the Managing Director of Jassyn O'Rourke Group. Well, Andy, why don't you just explain what you do, Andy, please.
Hello, everybody.
I know what he does.
And thank you all for coming, and thank the administration and deans for having us. I own a consulting practice that deals with intellectual property. That's brands and trademarks. We also deal with buying and selling companies and helping companies understand how to produce and where to produce, as well as understand their organizations. We represent companies like Giorgio Armani, Calvin Klein, Donna Karan, more contemporary and younger designers who are not so young any longer, like Catherine Malandrino. We've worked with numbers of smaller brands like Genera over the years. And the only reason I'm here is I spent my life getting here, first being a trainee, learning how to understand what a line looked like, then understanding how to get a line produced, then understanding what merchandising was about, and then eventually understanding corporate finance. So being a consultant is sort of the end product of spending 24 years learning my practice and craft. And for the last a lot of years, I've been a consultant. So that's who I am, and we'll be happy to give you some more background in a moment.
And then Kathleen is the president of, as you know already, Esp Trend Lab, and she's renowned, but I want to explain, let Kathleen explain exactly what she does for her clients. And she can name some of her clients.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, good. Happy Monday, right? You're almost done with school. We're happy to be here. The name of my company is Esp Trend Lab, and it was founded by my business partner, Alan Sidiri. So that's where the ESP comes from, Alan Sidiri Partnership. But it also stands for what we do as a company. Like Andy's company, we're consultants, but we help companies, about 1,000 companies every year, develop their product lines. We help them pick the colors, the fabrics, the materials, even sometimes the lifestyle trends, like the small trend. We worked on that years ago, and that's the kind of thing that a company like Starbucks is interested in. So we're working across industry with fashion, beauty, home, coffee companies, car companies, helping them get their products right. Because just like Andy, we've seen a lot of CEOs lose their jobs, and one of the main reasons that a company will not do well and a CEO won't last in his job is if they don't get the product right. So that's one of the main things that our company does. We help them get the product right from the very beginning.
Okay, great. And lastly, we have Mr. Tom Nastos, and Tom, among other things, is the president of E&K shows, and they operate about 28 shows, the largest being the WSA, the Western Shoe Association, the shoe show, and the Coterie, among a bunch of others. And Tom also teaches a course here at FIT, and he runs an apparel company as well. And I think I wouldn't take on any more projects, Tom. Okay? But Tom, tell us about you.
I'm not looking to take any more projects, that's for sure. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom Nastos. As Michael had mentioned, I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of a company called E&K International. E&K International is probably the largest, or is the largest fashion, apparel, and footwear trade show company in the United States. We do operate 29 trade shows, primarily in New York and Las Vegas and Los Angeles. The largest of which you may or may not be familiar is the Coterie Show here in New York, and the WSA Show, which is based in Las Vegas. In addition to that, Michael's correct, I do operate a wholesale manufacturing company that I founded in 1990. The company's called Endurance LLC. It owns and operates various brands in young men's and young ladies' business. And then the third thing is, as a graduate of FIT and as an alumni of FIT, I also teach a course, Supply Chain Management, in the graduate school, which I think one of my students or previous students is here tonight, this afternoon. So, and I am not looking for any additional projects. So, thank you.
There's one little thing I want to mention about Tom. His roommate, his wife, happens to be an FIT. He met his wife here. Isn't that true, Tom?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Okay,
Yes, so
go figure.
I don't know how often that happens, but
It happened.
we did
It
meet
happened
here
to you.
in the
That's all that
cafeteria.
counts.
So.
There you go. There you go. What was, I don't know, what was Jackie's major?
FBM.
How do you like that? Okay. And then, can I just mention, should I mention what I do? Yeah. Okay. What I do is, folks, is I run a factoring company, and what factors do is that we finance typically apparel companies, and we also manage their accounts receivable. So we do, in effect, two functions. And we have some very nice clients, including like a Diane von Furstenberg is a client, and a Steve Madden, a Tula, Carmen Mark Falva. We have like about 400 clients. Tom coincidentally happens to be one of them under Endurance. And we have an office here in New York, and we have an office in Los Angeles, and we have a satellite office in Shanghai. Right, Jeffrey? Jeffrey is one of my colleagues. So let me ask a couple of questions to our panelists. And we're going to open up, by the way, in a minute or two, questions, to the audience. If you can think of something, they'll be happy to certainly try to answer it. The first question I'd like to ask them is how did they get to where they are today? Did they just graduate college? Andy, how did you do this, Andy? Be honest.
I started in the apparel business in 1971 when it was really a very different industry than it is today. Most of the companies were family-owned, entrepreneurial. Department stores had no more than 20 branches around the country, and there were roughly 12,500 men's stores and 20,000 women's specialty stores. And I began my career in operations. I was going to graduate school, getting a degree in corporate finance, and while working for a small family company, I looked up and I saw designers playing with fabric, salespeople writing plans, and it looked a lot more exciting than putting numbers in boxes. And I decided to build a career, learning and listening to everybody, borrowing, learning craft, learning skills, but most importantly, learning about product. And shortly thereafter, I decided to do something, and that was to change jobs, which is something that you do in the fashion business. You follow your nose to see where the next opportunity is. And sometime in the next 10 years, I probably changed jobs 5 times, each time learning something new. Eventually learning about how to make a product and how to merchandise a product, which meant dealing with designers, dealing with production people, dealing with customers that were retailers. Sort of like a balance. What looks good may not be sellable. What's sellable may not look good. Create a balance all the time, and that's what the art of merchandising is at the end of the day, getting it prepared to get to the customer. Eventually, I got very lucky, and somebody recruited me in the jeans industry in the late 1970s, and I became a partner in a company owned by a very large trading company, which was called Lee & Fung and The Gap. And because I was in the right job at the right time, I learned about licensing. I learned about what a licensing deal was, and we became Ralph Lauren's first licensee. And as life is, not everything is straight uphill. It was a wonderful deal that went from a certain amount of sales volume to a bankruptcy within 2 years because it wasn't merchandised properly. And what I did shortly thereafter is I took that trademark and I sold it to another company called Biederman Industries. In the meantime, I changed jobs again, and I became one of the group presidents of a company called Jones Apparel Group. And from 1979 until 1985, I was responsible for Jones New York, a brand called Regatta Sport, Norma Kamali, using all the skills I had developed in understanding about product and people and retail and putting numbers in boxes. But all about product, because none of these apparel companies or fashion companies would work unless the product makes sense. And then I decided to change jobs again, which people do all the time in fashion. And I joined a company called Biederman Industries, which strangely enough was the company we sold the Ralph Lauren license to. And Biederman was a company that was Saint Laurent's partner. We owned a business called Karl Lagerfeld. We also had the Ralph Lauren women's wear business, Calvin Klein business. And at some point in my career, I said, I'm not changing jobs again, I'm changing careers. And in 1990, I decided to take all the skills I had and all the knowledge, but most importantly, the network of contacts I had, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Contact networking is really important, and I started a consulting group. And have been blessed over these last almost 20 years to have made a difference. And that's what we do, and that's how I got here.
Kathleen?
Michael. Well, I always like to say that I took a really long and winding road to end up where I am right now. And whenever I meet with fashion students, I always say you're so much further ahead of where I was, because my story started out when I was 5 years old, and probably like many of you, I was cutting up my Barbie dolls and saying, you know, which one do you like best, to my brothers and my father. And then when they would say number 2, I'd say, why? Why do you like number 2 the best? And but I didn't even know that going to a fashion school or studying design was an option for me. So when I went off to school, I was pre-med. You know, why? Because it was the hardest thing for me to do. It didn't come as easily as other things, so I was like, that's exactly what I should be studying. And then when I looked around the chemistry lab and saw my fellow students so excited with their Bunsen burners, and I knew I wasn't, I was like, oh no, I have to switch majors. So I called my parents and said, I'm thinking about theater, because it's the closest thing I could come to something kind of creative in the school I was at. And they were like, well, that sounds nice, but could you also do something a little bit more practical? So I basically, at that point, became a double major, fashion and business. And that's been very much represents and is kind of my long and winding road. After college, I came to New York, had a bunch of job offers in fashion, but none of them would allow me to pay my rent and start repaying my loans. So I took a job in consulting, did that for a few years, and found myself in Boston. I was like, what happened to the idea of fashion? You know, I have to get back on track. So I was lucky enough to find a job at Escada. And I worked there in a role where I was working with a lot of their subsidiary companies in their beauty company, which they were just launching. So it was almost like I had a mini training program, and I worked in marketing and sales, and I was lucky enough to have been there when Escada acquired Badgley Mischka, which you guys probably know is designed right here in New York, and it was like a dream come true for me, and I really learned the whole business. But while at Escada, I was working with a lot of consultants, and a lot of them had MBAs, and my little brother went to get an MBA, and I was like, I think I might want one of those, because I was kind of feeling jealous. So I applied to one business school, and they accepted me, and I went off to Harvard Business School, and I was cold called a lot because there weren't many of us fashion girls in the program there. And did that it was full time for 2 years, and after school, through friends, through networks, through contacts, I met Alan Sediri, who's my business partner today, and after working in my job at ESP for 6 months, she asked me to become a partner in the business, and 10 years later, I'm here. So that's my long and winding road. So you're way ahead of where I am at this point if you love fashion. So.
Tom?
As I had mentioned before, my path, I had absolutely no connection to the fashion industry whatsoever. From my background, I grew up here in New York, and I was fortunate that I got a summer job actually at a firm that was located on 28th and Park Avenue, and at that time 28th and Park Avenue was the main office and the warehouse. So I had an opportunity to work in that particular organization, which was a fashion company, and it opened my eyes, and that gravitated me to FIT, and that's how I ended up here at FIT. That was actually in 1977 when I said, wow, this is an interesting industry, and it would be something that I would be interested in pursuing. So I continued to work at that company as I was going through school here, and basically sharing some of the same experiences you guys are going through. And then upon graduation, I was fortunate, and the market was expanding at that time. I had an opportunity to work for some really good companies, and my background really started from the manufacturing and the production and the technical side. So I had an opportunity, and I always had the thought in my mind that if I understood the product, if I understood the construction and how to manufacture it, that would give me an opportunity that I have a chance to work with finance, I have a chance to work with product development people, I have a chance to work with salespeople. So I based my career path on working with the manufacturing side and working with merchandisers and product development people. So I worked with 2 companies basically during that time period from 1981 to 1990. And then I made the decision to go into my own business in 1990. And that was difficult. Had nobody really to help me, just opened the doors and said, okay, it's, I'm 30 years old, I got to do this, I have to, now's my opportunity to do it, and started the business. Initially, the business in my first 3 weeks, I had some incredible sales, and I felt really kind of good about it, and then the next 9 months, didn't get one order at all from anybody. But fortunately, through a difficult time, we were able to reconstruct what we were doing, and then the company began to develop, and have been operating that business since then. And since I was in the market, I was able to expand my business in doing various products and growing the business into different brands. And then got an opportunity to invest in other businesses, specifically in the fashion business, and got involved with a company called Forsman Little, and together with Forsman Little invested in E&K International, and have been a board member for numerous years of E&K, and that's in an expansion mode, and have been operating E&K along with Elise Kroll the last 4 years, and been growing our business. So pretty much my story.
Good. You want to hear my story? After I graduated, undergraduate, I had a job lined up through my uncle in the logistics business, and one of our, we're part of this fashion services network, and we have people, we have these 3 individuals that are members, myself, and we also happen to have Mr. Andrew Rotundi, who's a principal in Dynamic Worldwide. Thank you, Andrew. And at any rate, so I had this job for, was it Sealand? The Sea Train, I forget what they were called back then. Then the whole economy went through a downturn, and they put a freeze on hiring. So now I had to really go out and get a job on my own. I go to a headhunter, and he said to me, well, I'm going to send you up to a factor. You know what a factor is? And I said, yes, I did. I lied. I didn't know what a factor was. And I went up and I interviewed with this company called United Factors, which was a very big factoring company at the time. And I got lucky, and they hired me. And I've really changed very few jobs that my industry has consolidated because of mergers and acquisitions and the like. And that's, I've always stayed in this one little silly industry. Go figure. But the questions that I want to ask the panelists are, what are the biggest mistakes that you've made in your career? I know I've made a lot of them, but what are the biggest ones? I'll ask Tom first.
Biggest mistakes.
Nothing in particular comes to mind as a huge mistake. During the course of the day, and as you operate a business, you do make mistakes. You don't intend to make mistakes, but in an operation, you tend to make mistakes. I think the most important part is the corrective action that we take. When I look at the big picture, as far as a career decision, there were some opportunities that I had in Asia that, in reflecting on that, maybe I should have taken advantage, because all of us feel, right place at the right time and certain things. I happened to have been in Asia, and particularly in Hong Kong, at the right place at the right time with certain opportunities, and I made a conscious decision not to take advantage of those opportunities, which was more on a personal basis on what I was willing to sacrifice. So I really made that decision. Was it really a mistake? Financially, maybe I would have been better off, but personally, probably not. So I can't really qualify it as a mistake, but it was something that always stayed in my mind.
A missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity, okay? Big one.
Yeah. Kathleen?
I totally agree with what you just said, Tom, about I don't really believe there are mistakes. It's how you approach them. But one little one, usually when I feel like I've made a mistake is when I haven't followed my instincts. And the best example I can give you is that I really wanted to take French when I was in high school. And you guys have heard me say this, and it sounds like such a little thing, but my parents said, and they insisted on so little, and I was a good student. And they said, really, Spanish is going to be is the second language of our country, and we think it would be much better. I should have fought harder to take French, because languages don't come easily to me, and I spend about a month of my life every year in France, and I'm horrible. And and I wish I was more courageous to just say, s'il vous plaît, and, just belt it out. And I also haven't taken it. I haven't tried to make up for that mistake. But I would say that the mistakes I've made are usually just not following my instincts. So the one thing I've learned as I've advanced in years and in my career is when I have that nagging feeling, I pay attention to it. When my gut is telling me something, I know it's for a reason. And the mistakes I've really regretted in business and in life is when I haven't paid attention to it. So.
Andy?
First of all, in fashion, mistakes are not fatal. You can make mistakes over and over again, but don't make the same mistake more than twice. Right. And that's part of fashion, is making mistakes. I think following instinct is very important. I look back upon my career, because I'm probably, for sure, the oldest one on the table here. And I think the greatest mistake was not using FIT as a resource as I developed my career and understood more about FIT before I was a consultant. Of looking at all of you, and this may sound like it's lip service, you're a great resource. The educational institution itself is a great resource, but for us in the fashion industry, what you represent all the time is current talent and a knowledge pool, also our customers. More importantly, the ability to bounce fresh ideas off people that we normally couldn't do. And if there was a mistake, not knowing enough about FIT early on in my career.
Good. I want to make a comment as to, how we see the business environment, how it's really gone through a whole metamorphosis over the last 18 months, last 24 months. And we see it from a financial perspective, because why? Because we're financing, fashion companies, vendors to the department stores, and we're also granting credit to the retailers. So we see, a huge amount of people that have either failed or merged with other companies, certain retailers that have failed or merged and the like. And so it's created a lot of upheaval. But I think through that upheaval, it creates pockets of opportunity. And I want to speak to that issue of you, as ultimately graduating students, and will go out to the workforce and either A, get a job for someone, or B, find a way to be entrepreneurial and start something on your own. And I could tell the story, and I think I may have told the story to one or two people here, but I remember the day that, it's a couple years ago, when Steve Madden, the shoe company, he had come to my office, and he was looking for financing. It's a true story. And he had two partners, and they were building shoes in Brooklyn, and they needed money. So they decided to get in the car. They heard about a factoring company, and they came in to see me. And they had a stack of invoices, and they decided they were going to bring their invoices into me, and they were going to drive home back to Brooklyn with cash. So, and they decided. And they came in, and Steve carried on, and he had this baseball cap, and he was a very charming guy. And his two partners were the actual workers, and they had shoe dye on. I remember they clearly had shoe dyes on. So I said, listen, Steve, you're very nice. And he says, look at these shoes, and they're blowing out at Bloomingdale's, and we're running out of money. I need your money. And I said, okay. I said, well, you're not going to get money today, but we're going to introduce. Oh, I asked him, I said, what about a financial statement? And they said, what's that? Right? I said, well, listen, let me give you a name of a couple of CPA firms that will, prepare a financial statement for you, and then we'll talk, right? So they walk out. Steve walks out of my office last, and he turns around to me. He says, listen, I really appreciate you helping me. He says, this is really fantastic, and I'll never forget this. And don't worry, I'm going to go public, right? It's true. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it to him, obviously. I said, here's a guy who doesn't know what a financial statement is, and he's going public, Well, we get together, and he's shipping at a rate of about he's doing volume at about $5 million a year. And he calls me up, and this is before we had computers, unfortunately. So he calls me up, he says, aren't you going to congratulate me? I said, for what? He says, I went public. I said, I said, you got to be, and I thought it was, it was an April Fool's joke. I hung up. But sure enough, he went public. But today, there's a long story about Mr. Madden. But besides that, it's a very legitimate company. He does about $400 million a year, and it's really one of the renowned shoe companies today. So that's the story. But I really want to talk about these opportunities that may, as the panel perceives them, exist in the environment today, and what do you need to know about them, and what challenges exist? And let Kathleen speak to that issue first. Kathleen, could you do that? As far as challenges of choosing to go either starting your own business, perhaps, or gaining some experience in working for others.
Yeah, well, I think there's really there's no right way and no wrong way. So I think it's up to you individually to kind of find your own way and your own path. And I think you can tell all the different ways that we came into our own careers that one of the most important things is to learn every step of the way. I speak to student groups all the time, and many of them are interested in getting into trend forecasting and what we do, and they see it as the fun part of the industry, and I kind of try and tell them that we're up till midnight sometimes working on our trend books, and it's not all that glamorous, but they ask us, how do you get into that if you want to get into it? And for us in our company, we always think it's very valuable to have people who have a few years of experience. So, and I think the same is true if you're starting out and you want to do your own thing. Even internships, I think, are so valuable. I know when I was in school, I was waitressing all the time, and I couldn't really afford to do any internships. But if you have a chance to do internships, I think they're so valuable because you get to test out a company, and they get to test out you, and along the way, you're really learning. Are any of you thinking about going right in and starting your own business? Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's a great thing to do, and if you are considering doing that, as Andy said, FIT is a great resource, and everyone you meet along the way is a great resource, and something that I know from my own career, and Andy said that your friends really make a difference. And everyone you meet, and your parents' friends, and just really calling for help and asking for help. When I was in business school, one of the professors I had made such an impression on me because he said to this, big group of Harvard Business School students who sometimes aren't the most humble. I like to think I was on the more humble side of things. But he said, don't be afraid to ask for help. And he said, don't forget this line, to go into someone and say, I need help. And I've thought of that so many times. So when it comes to pulling together financial statements or figuring out to raise, how to raise money, if you're going to start off on your own, man, you're going to need help. So remember all the people you know in your life, because they're going to be there for you, and you're going to need them. And if you do take a job in a company, I think there's something you can always learn. And I always, when I'm meeting with people to work in our little company, I'm looking for people who are willing to do anything, absolutely anything, and especially in this job market right now. I think we're all doing things that some of us can't even imagine, especially in small companies. So anyway, that's just a little perspective.
Andy?
How many of you know the brand Calvin Klein and Donna Karan and Giorgio Armani and Jill Stewart and Brooklyn Industries? Well, all of them started by individuals who had an idea for a single product. But all of them worked for somebody before they started. And they all sort of got notches on the belt by succeeding and failing either as designers or merchandisers, or understanding the numbers as well as product. As I said before, fashion is about change, and in order to be successful, you have to dare to fail. And more importantly, you have to challenge the system. And challenging the system means having good eyes, open our eyes, walk into a situation, and try to learn from each situation. As Kathleen said, understand finance as well as design, and understand pattern making, or understand what jewelry is cut from and what the metals are. But there's a left side of the brain and a right side of the brain, and it's about balancing, to know about product and procurement of the product and placement of the product. There are a lot of P's in this, by the way. A lot of positioning of the product and the pricing of the product. And the only one that's not a C is what the competition is. If it's not your product, whose product will they buy? And that's usually the first step in determining what you're going to do if you're going to start your own company. But from the experience that I would recommend is learn on someone else's time. That's not to say you shouldn't be an entrepreneur and start something, and maybe by some accident or by luck or by good luck, you'll be successful. But it can't hurt to take the time and carry a pad and sit next to a senior designer or production person or a financial person, ask questions, take the lowest paying job possible or a non-paying job if that's where you want to work, and learn. And what you learn and absorb quickly will pay you in spades each time. You will learn more and more and more and put yourself in a position to be successful.
Tom?
Basically agree with everything that was said here. I will only add that I have two sons that are also in university like yourselves, and I asked them, when I get an opportunity to visit them, I always notice that on campus, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal was always available, but not one student ever picked it up. It was there for free, okay, but nobody ever picked it up, okay, and I doubt many of you have the Wall Street Journal on you right now, okay, but I was curious on saying, well, you know, this is an asset that's sitting here for information that's sitting here for free. Why aren't you just picking it up and reading it? And you know, basically, they have all the information, they're just getting it differently, okay? They were getting it online, they were accessing all the information. Which brings me to the point that I think that historically how my career went and how I operated and how I did business, I think we're at a point of time that your careers will be completely different than mine, okay? I think it's changing, and I think it's changing on a global platform, okay? And I think you're going to be able to participate very differently than the way I did in the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, I'd like to be there to participate with you, but I think it's going to be a very, very different experience on how product is manufactured, how it's brought to market, how you market it to the consumer, how you reach out on a, you know, as I mentioned before, on a global basis. You know, today you're able to communicate with really students of your age and, you know, around the globe on brands and what your visions are completely differently than when I was your age. So I think your career path, even though we'll have some basic fundamentals the same that were similar to ours, I think you're at the point in history where it's going to diverge. You're going to have a difference, and it's going to be a significant change that I think probably will be in the better. And it's the individuals here that recognize it that will be able to take advantage of it, and I think it will benefit entrepreneurs. I mean, it's amazing, you know, when you look at the apparel industry, one of the reasons I did look to get into it is that if I really wanted to get into the car business, it would have been very difficult for somebody like myself to invest and get the tooling and to get into the automobile manufacturing business. But this industry allowed me to get started. The capital required to get into it was at least, even though it was daunting, you know, possible for me to do it. I think that these new platforms will allow even more entrepreneurs. I think that the opportunities will be far greater for people of this generation. It's just a question of wanting to take advantage of it.
Yeah, Andy.
To add to what Tom said and what we talk about every day in our lives and our practices, you're someplace where you were never. And that's what is interesting. When we all started in fashion, a trend would start in Milan or France and take about a month and a half to get to Cleveland, Ohio, or to New York City before it got through the newspapers and people saw people wearing it. Right now, we're in instantaneous communication. What happens in Beijing happens in New York. What happens in New York happens in every city in the country at the same moment. The democracy of fashion, though it sounds like a political statement, is amazing. People are fashion. The influence today of the internet, of computers, of online services is beyond our wildest dream when we were starting. Words like social networking, which are new to us, what you deal with every day, is the future of advertising and marketing. It's what you're going to be involved with that will make a difference, whether it be jewelry or food or apparel or footwear. It's the ability to communicate and market an idea instantaneously to large groups of people and make a difference.
Yeah, since there's so many people that are inclined to, to start up on your own, maybe, we certainly would welcome any questions that you may choose to have. So just if you have a question, just raise your hand. Yes, this young lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's the foundation that you would start your business? The basics? Is that? Going. Well, first first you're gonna have to have a concept or a platform, okay?
If it's about creating product first, you've got to be able to create a prototype. But before that, you have to have an idea that you can bounce off someone and to make sure that you can validate it or not. That doesn't mean you're going to believe in what you validate. You may have an idea that's never been shown or discussed with anybody that will be world-changing. But once you've established that thought and want to continue it and bring it to somebody, you have to be able to show it to somebody, not just verbalize it, whether it be sketches or samples. But you have to have an idea of who you might want to sell it to and how to price it. So the technical aspects are as married to the design aspects or to the visualization you have. I'm sure that doesn't answer your complete question. You have to have enough capital to start. And then the troubles begin.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I think one of the most important, things you need besides the idea of like, what are you going to make, what are you going to sell, is you have to have, something that Mr. Jassyn mentioned. You have to have money, okay? You may not have to have billions of dollars, okay? But you have to have some form of starting capital. And then you have to have the ability to either find financing, run to, somebody like me or one of our other colleagues, that does this type of financing, okay, and have the ability to get them to agree to finance you, which means you have to have professionals like a lawyer and an accountant, and they have to be able to present. You have to present your idea along with your financial plan. Why? Because they're going to lend you money, and they want to be secured. And I think there's other aspects of besides having those professionals. We're fortunate today to have Mr. Rotundi in the audience, and he operates this company, Dynamic Worldwide, that does logistics. And Andrew, you see businesses start, and you see businesses that succeed, and you see businesses fail. Why? Right. Yeah. I think what we're trying to say is that you can't do it on your own. You can't, if you're the creative person, okay, fine. You may not be able to, to be the chief financial officer or run, the shipping and logistics and, and do it all. You have to have it. You have to be able to either hire those people, have the team. You really have, you just can't. You have to reach out and be able to, assemble a team, either an internal team or paid professionals, So I think I saw somebody else. Yes, this first lady in the front row. Right.
What type of product were you considering bringing to market?
Yeah, I would suggest that you stick with what and it's something that's probably a similar target market to you and your friends, and that way you're building from strength. I know some companies in India that are working right now, and they're trying to do kind of a hybrid, blended kind of Western Indian kind of clothing, and I think those concepts seem very exciting right now, and very exciting from an international perspective too, because I think that anything that's kind of not so pure is really resonating with people right now. Things with any kind of products that have mixed references and also seem very authentic and genuine and very unique. So does that help at all?
You mean as far as with a view to get a job? In Okay. It is. Kathleen, she's the best at this question. Because here's the bottom line.
Well,
How long does it take, Kathleen? Listen to
you
this.
love to ask me
This is the best.
every time.
How long does it take for you to decide to hire somebody? How many seconds?
Well, you know the answer to that question. I'm very fast. I'll tell you a very quick story. When I was in business school, I had a professor who told us that they did a study at Harvard Law School about how long it takes for students to make up their mind when a new professor walks into the room. And the students are gonna decide whether they're gonna respect that professor, whether they're gonna listen, whether they're gonna like that professor. Does anyone want to guess how long it takes? 3 seconds. Well, the study said 10 seconds, but I think in fashion it may be even quicker. So I think 3 seconds is good. Yeah, and I know I'm super fast, and sometimes it's terrible. Sometimes I want to stop myself and say, give this person a chance. But I mean, I look for little things in interns and in people I'm interviewing. Appearance is important. Good grooming, clean fingernails, shoes that don't have scuffs and your heels aren't worn off, and just looking like you paid attention that morning when you got up, and that you're dressed to fit in with the situation too. So those are just some very fast first impression things. A good handshake, looking right into the eyes. And then in terms of working every day with interns, we have about 5 interns at any one time at ESP, and I think I said earlier, I love interns who will just jump in and do anything, who take the initiative to say, is there anything you need help with? I don't, just asking questions and being willing to do anything, but also to look to see that there might be something. So showing the initiative to come up with a project too really matters. And then interns who appropriately kind of make suggestions and participate and are enthusiastic and they care and they're interested. That all matters so much, whether you're interning or working within a company. Those are the things that matter to me.
But make sure you care. People
Yeah.
can tell if you don't care, if it's just being blasé. You sort of disappear.
We're gonna get
but also know about the company you want to get that job with. Interview the company as well as having them interview you. Carry a small pad and take notes. It really shows that you're concerned, and those notes really pay off. You might find something out in those notes you can tell someone they did right or wrong. But you're making an impression on them as they're making an impression on you.
Tom? No, that's it. Yeah. So, okay. Yes, this young lady right there. The question is, do you have to be in New York or Los Angeles to be in the fashion industry?
We're
It's a good
finding a lot of
question.
American students have had open access into countries like Great Britain and France. As we would have taken people from Great Britain and France as interns to learn about what's going on off in the London School of Design or St. Catherine's, we're finding that there are a lot of American expatriates or students that are going over there. But as you can tell, because you are in the fashion industry, because you're trying to get there, that the centers have really been narrowed down to the New York market in LA and Seattle and Portland, Washington, where Nike is, a little bit in Miami, and very little left in Texas. So the centers have changed, but what we're seeing is there really is a global economy, though, by people being able to communicate online. A lot of companies do different things here in New York and do other things offshore. So
And to what Andy said, I would just add that I think there's such a hunger for uniqueness right now that we're working with companies in Boulder right now. There's great stuff happening in Boulder. So I think, there are places where there's great design. Like a town like Boulder has a lot of performance and kind of sporty stuff happening. So if you're interested in a particular place, I think if you dig in, my instinct is that there are probably more things going on outside of New York and LA, certainly than when I graduated and was looking at fashion jobs in 1986. In a way, because I think there are a lot more startups and, like what Tom said too about things being different. You can start your own thing. Like, it's a freelance economy. Half the people we work with are not employees; they're freelancers. So, I think we're going to see more and more of that, and more exciting things happening outside of the usual kind of places.
Yeah, but I'm just curious. What are you thinking of doing? Right. 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 I can tell you experientially, the two, as they mentioned, the two hot centers are New York and Los Angeles. Okay, it's kind of, but is it possible to be someplace else? It's possible. This young man. Yeah, it's been, I can tell you, a lot of, larger companies, call it institutions, have cut back on internships. It doesn't mean that they're totally eliminated. We do interns, on a limited basis, but do you do it?
Yeah, we've maintained the same level of internship
Yeah.
during this time as we did in the past, and we have plans to continue it at exactly the same level in all of our companies, so no difference for us.
Right. Kathleen, I know you
No,
handle
no
it.
difference for us. All of our
Yeah.
internships are unpaid and usually for school credit, and everything's exactly the same.
Right. Yes, this. Right. Yeah. I'm going to tell you what you have to do. Online, you could, till you're purple in the face online, okay? You really have to reach out and find somebody that can get you an introduction. It's, in my opinion, you have to just work the system, okay? A friend of mine works for PVH and, blah, blah, blah. So what they'll do, they'll try to get you a special interview. You have to really work the system. And listen, there's nothing inappropriate. You're just merely a friend of a friend, and that's really the way you just have to be. It's a competitive world, and that's kind of how you have to do it. This young lady. Andrew, did you hear that question?
Yeah. Yes.
Right, because it's very, what Andrew does is so crucial to be whether or not you're successful. I mean, you may have the best product, and as soon as it hits the stores, it may just blow out. But here's the thing. You have to get it there to the stores, whether it's their distribution center or you're shipping directly to, each individual store. It has to get there the way they want it, and I'll tell you why. Because the stores have become so sophisticated as far as and Andrew, I can probably let you speak to this, but we see it because if it's not there on time, shipped properly, invoiced correctly, what they're going to do, they're going to charge you for it. And they will come back to you, the store, with a chargeback, which means they will take money away from you. So that's why what Andrew does is such a vital part of doing business. It's so important. I mean, all these people will tell you.
The important thing to remember, the product, who you want to sell it to, who it competes with, its price, are the primary factors in why somebody will buy it who's not your cousin or aunt or your friend. And that's why a store might buy it. And the advantages that exist today are you don't have to have a showroom to do this. There are people that will represent your line, or you can do it. Or the trade shows that are run by ENK, which produce forums for people to go out in mass to be able to show customers. But though logistics and corporate finance are important, and you can't get anything done without that, unless you have a product that somebody wants and can figure out how to get it made and shipped, all the other things are events. You've got to have a cause first. That's who you want to sell it to. And it really talks to you about wanting to sell product to the bridge market. Before you decide to sell the bridge market, look at the marketplace. Is it growing or shrinking? What do the vendors look like? How big are they? You all live in a world which has a world, whether it be called contemporary or something other than contemporary, that's not called bridge. It's about you all. Before you sell something or want to build something, look at where the opportunity might be. If you want to work for the bridge market and sell something, go to work for a bridge company that's established.
Right. Yes, this. The thing right. Okay. Well, what you're doing is taking a product from a trade show. a-
Only
Okay,
if they
and
give you
then-
permission to do so. But you're a business student. How many of you are business students? And how many of you are design students? Can all the business students just stand up for one moment, please? Can you all face the design students and shake hands? Your opportunities in this room. And, you know, I'm happy you just did what you did. Every important designer that you think is important, Calvin Klein had a guy named Barry Schwartz who understood what it was to put numbers in columns and go to the bank. Ralph Lauren had a fellow named Stuart Chrysler, who's my partner, and a guy named Peter Strom. Armani had his partner, and down the line, everyone that has been a successful design company had someone doing all the other stuff. But every successful designer understands business. Because the moment there's a glitch and you don't understand what it costs to price a product or don't understand the cost sheet, you've put yourself at risk. So when you all meet later and have a cup of coffee or do whatever you're going to do, you are the potential partners that each of you are
Right.
going to form a relationship with. You're in this room.
It's true. But I just want to mention that, you know, when it comes, because we're on the business side, right? But as far as, you know, understanding numbers, you know, I tell people in life, Allison, you know this, you can only add, subtract, divide, multiply. It's, if you immerse yourself in it, you know, whether it's a financial statement or, you know, cost analysis, it's not, honestly, you don't have to be, Alice, I am not that smart, I'll be honest with you. But you have to immerse yourself in it, and you don't have to do it all day long. It's not that hard, okay? People are afraid of numbers. They're really, there's nothing to be afraid of. This, it's true. It really, yes, this student right here. How to market a new brand when you don't have too much money. There's something called social media that somebody invented only a couple years ago.
Or visit small boutiques in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn and other areas, Canal Street. Visit stores that might take a risk with you in product.
Yeah, because I think things right now seem to be so viral and they're contagious. So if you can just tap into those networks, and I think I said before, like stick kind of close to home, and don't forget that what you're doing is very personal. If you're going to start your own business, it's very personal. And I felt so fortunate to meet Mark and James from Badgley Mishka, and they're considered darlings of the press. And part of the reasons they were so successful is that they were very personal. People liked them. People wanted to buy from them, and they had a lot of integrity as business people. So if you stick close to home, walk around, talk to people, get feedback, be flexible, and just sell to your friends too. Things are contagious.
Yeah. You know, Tom has a very interesting perspective because he's at this market, whether it's coterie or the shoe show, whatever, and you see these brands, Tom, tell me if I'm not right, they just take off.
Well, I'll just add one more thing. If most of the brands that we've started and we've participated in, we never had money, and there's never enough money, okay? But one additional vehicle is product placement, okay? If you focus and concentrate on product placement, if you have the right product and you happen to get it on the right person and it goes in the press or it's on the media, okay, it could change your entire business, okay? So product placement, I would put kind of on the top of the list because that's a useful tool when you have limited marketing dollars. Because it says something very differently. Traditional advertising, especially your generation, will look at it one way, okay? But if you see a person that you respect and admire, and they're actually wearing your product, and they're representing what you're wanting to say, then other people are going to say, wow, I want to look like that. I want to look at that. And they'll take it a little bit differently. So
Right.
that's another way to do
Does
it.
that answer your question? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. Executive, what we're looking for, an executive summary when you are... what I look for is something that's really condensed, because I'll tell you, we see, Jeff, how many deals do we look at each week? We look at a bunch of nonsense that comes in. Okay, but the thing is that if it's big, these big books, it's really you have to be able to condense a very complicated concept into a couple. You want to make it relatively brief. And if they're interested, then they'll come back and say, okay, send us some more paper or come in to meet with us. So you really kind of want to make it, to the point, not with a lot of nonsense, because you're going to say, why? Because typically the reader is going to be somebody who should be sophisticated and knowledgeable and be able to sort it out. And we could figure it out in, how long does it take us, Jeffrey? About 10, 15 minutes. Boom. Yeah. And then we cut to we look at numbers, so we look at those numbers. Some people gives a headache. We running out of time? What? Okay, 3 more questions. This gentleman right here in the front row. Yes. Well, you can go to someone either in the asset-based industry, which is collateral-driven, which will also include factoring companies, okay? The other option is you can look to try to find, private equity, which is, which is a little bit challenged today. But those are really your arenas to look for.
There's another way of finding
Or
money. That's just
strategic
raising a
alliance.
strategic alliance. If you have an idea of a product and it makes some sense, find somebody who's a big company that makes a similar product and go to them with the idea and try to form some sort of liaison, a relationship. It's unsafe walking on 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
You can protect ideas up to a certain point, but you have to be trusting enough. And it's very hard to invent something that's been around for always. It's about representation. So at some point, you've got to sort of vet out what a bad opportunity is. But if you're going to start a product in your world as a startup, rather than taking all of your money, finding strategic partners who can do part of the work in production perhaps, or perhaps in logistics. The fashion industry, and I say that for apparel and jewelry and footwear, the cornerstone has always been a strategic alliance. Someone that did something for somebody else that they couldn't do themselves. Then the problems become how to raise money.
Right. Okay. This thing. So the question, if you have a line, and how else could you get it out there? Right. Okay, in the case of VNK, Tom, you explained to them that you just can't walk in, and they have to really choose you. Tom, tell us how that works.
Basically, and I'll use one of our trade shows, the Coterie, which is twice a year. It's in February and September. We have, as big as this sounds, approximately 1,300 exhibitors. All exhibitors go through a jury process. Every exhibitor is looked at. We look at very specifically their product, their target market, and it's done every season. So there's actually a review board that looks at every individual company and their product. And the reason that we do that is that ultimately we want to have a great show, and we want that to match with the retailers that we want the retailers to have a positive experience, that's representing the market that they're shopping. So that's a critical element to what we do as far as a trade show is concerned. But I think your question was a little bit more, if you have a line, you want to specifically, how do you market the line, or sell it? Well, our sole function is to bring buyers and sellers together, okay, under a single venue in the most efficient manner for them to do their business. That's our primary goal. And then there's various companies. There could be selling agents, okay, that could potentially represent multiple lines in the show, or actual companies themselves.
A
Well,
lot of money. A lot of dough.
Expensive.
If you do a 10 by 10 booth, which we would provide, everything that you would need, a table like this and some chairs and the appropriate lighting, but not your samples. You have to be responsible for that. That costs approximately $6,500, okay, to do a trade show, okay, for a 10 by 10. And then from there, depending on what you decide to build, could get much more expensive. We have some exhibitors at our WSA show that spend about $1.5 million per trade show. So it depends.
I know, Alice, you're in a hurry, but I want to do two things so I can just explain part of the process and problem or opportunity. And then real life. Part of it's walking and knocking on a lot of doors to find someone that will believe in you. And there are two real life experiences that turned out to be extremely successful. In 1996, the mom of one of the members of FUBU knocked on every door that she can find until she knocked on the right door, and she had LL Cool J as somebody that was going to wear some of the product. And by accident, they knocked on the right door after being turned down. The same thing with Zach Posen. Zach's mom called every single person she knew, made every contact. Zach did the same thing. And it wasn't until 2 years later when they believed in the product and his personality, because the personality is part of the product, that people bought into it.
Right.
So there's no one set way of doing it, but you need to get out there.
Yes. Certainly. Vendors, exhibitors.
Yes, as I had mentioned before, it is changing dramatically, and we actually have a retail relations department, and one of our focus, as I had mentioned before, is on a global platform. So at Coterie, for example, since you bring that up, we had over 17,000 retailers come from around the globe, okay? So we actually focus on whether it's Paris or Stockholm. These are retailers from around the country, not only around the United States, but South America, whether it's Europe and Asia, and attract them to the show. And that's one of our strengths, that what we try to do. So what we're looking to do is to bring the entire market to bear at a single time, okay? And if you have a small brand, okay, you have an opportunity to highlight your skills and your talents to 17,000 retailers, okay? Now, that's a huge change than what it was 5 years ago, right? Or even less than 3 years ago. So we've approached the business differently, as I mentioned, as a global platform. And it attracts people from around the world.
Terrific. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I particularly want to thank Professor Bafasian, okay? No, but I just want to mention one thing because of the environment, the way we see things, you know, today in this environment, and people get discouraged, you know, because it's again they read the paper and it's the economy and everything. Well, because of that, it opens up these you know, opportunities. So my parting remark is, don't be discouraged because you'll all invariably find your way in life. Isn't that true? Yes. There you go. Now, I just want one last thing on the show. You know, we belong to this organization, you know, the 5 of us that are here today. And we have other colleagues, accountancy and lending and wealth management and on and on and on. So and we have a website. So if you, and we have all our emails. So if you have a question, you're welcome to go to the website and email us, and we'll all respond. What, this? Okay, it's the part of the website. So it's Fashion Services Network. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much.
I think you were all extraordinarily good and so productive. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. You can all come up if you have questions that I'm sure that our panelists will be happy to answer. Thank you.